We're husband and wife and business partners who aren't afraid to live life on the edge.
I'm Ryan.
And I'm Juliana.
From success and wellness to candid conversations on travel, food, and culture, we're here for it all.
All right, here we go. Today on The Edge, we have an incredible guest, Cathy Heller. Cathy is a powerhouse entrepreneur, best-selling author, and host of the top-rated podcast, Don't Keep Your Day Job, which has over 30 million downloads. Cathy is now the author of Abundant Ever After, a transformative guide to manifesting the life of your dreams. And we're going to talk all about it today. So welcome, Cathy. Thank you for joining us.
It's so good to be here.
So nice to see you. I love, love, love your book. I messaged you.
You did.
And I was just telling you how, immediately, and I've read so many manifestation books, and, you mentioned Deepak Chopra being on your show, which is so cool. Chopra, Gabby Bernstein, The Power of Positive Thinking, all these books in the past, which are so wonderful. And yours is excellent. And what I love is you break it down so practically and in such a way that I feel like my 12-year-old daughter can listen to it and it registers without being like, Mom, what are these people talking about? It's not so far out there. You just break it down into nice digestible pieces and it's fantastic.
That's so kind. Thank you so much. It means so much to me. Appreciate that.
You're welcome. No, it's true. And Ryan, so I have to tell you, Ryan he's newer to the whole manifestation, abundance, mindset. Well, not mindset. I mean, you're very mindset driven with business and things, but
let's pump the brakes here for a second. I'm not new to the idea. Okay. I mean, hey, look, I listened to The Secret. I watched that movie, whatever that was 15 years ago or more.
Right.
No, I mean, we can get into this a lot more. But I always just struggle with the idea of manifesting abundance versus get your ass out there and work hard type thing, So that's the thing I always struggle with is okay, yes. And I want to get into this with you because this is kind of one of the things I like about you in your book. It's a little bit more of practical, you can approach this with a little bit more of a realistic tone of voice instead of just all this foo-foo, yeah, this is all great. This is, pie in the sky fairy tales, but you have to actually apply some of this to real life to turn these things into reality.
Totally get the language you're speaking. Yes.
Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes when it comes down to the manifesting abundance and everything, I always go back to, look, I'm 40 years old. Billy Madison was the best thing in the world, right? You don't look for an hour, they call it quits. You get your ass out there and you find that fucking dog.
Yeah.
So that's the whole thing. I'm also in life and everything. I do a lot of we have other businesses and everything. We have a real estate business and stuff. And I do a lot of coaching and sales coaching and everything. And a lot of that is making sure you're in the right mindset because otherwise you're never going to do your job well.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, I mean, I love learning about your history, and we have a lot in common. We'll get to that. But at what point did you really come to this terms of knowing that you wanted to be in this space of, abundance and manifestation and really teaching others how to achieve that themselves?
First of all, I don't think I've been asked that question that way, which I really, I like that. That's
cool.
New. It's when did I know that I wanted to teach it? Well, when I was living in Jerusalem, which was a total surprise that I wound up there. After 3 years of living there, I felt like I had this code to the universe and it felt so good. And I felt like I could just stay there and keep having this very fulfilling spiritual life. Or I could just go back to the United States, which is where I grew up, and I could teach this software code to other people. And I wanted to do that. I felt called to do that. And so that's when I knew I was going to go back to the States. And I decided to move to LA, which I had never lived in LA. I grew up in South Florida. I just felt called to go to Los Angeles and start to kind of find creative ways to share this new software.
So cool. And what year was that? When did you go to LA?
2003.
Oh, wow.
So what is that? 22, 23 years ago,
Too
something
long
like
ago.
that. Yeah.
We don't talk about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm 45. So I moved here when I was 23 or something like that. Yeah. I've been here all that time.
Wow, that's great. And now, in addition to your podcast, so your podcast, Don't Keep Your Day Job. I love that. Right? Did I say it right? Am I on?
So I had a podcast called Don't Keep Your Day Job for 5 years. And 3 years ago, we changed it to the Cathy Heller show while we were kind of figuring out what are we going to call it. And we moved from this business category on iTunes, which was really it wasn't about business. It was about doing your life's work. Don't Keep Your Day Job was all about like, if you were free and you got paid to be you, what is your spiritual calling? What is your assignment? What would just make you feel like time stood still? And so for 5 years, we interviewed people who blew glass and wrote plays and opened bakeries and fashion designers. And it was just so much fun. And after 5 years of being in the dance of flow state, which is really what we're talking about, how do you just live your life from flow state? How does your job feel like flow state? How does play and fun and creativity become the center of your life? And how do you get paid to just like manifest money through being in your zone of genius and flow? I started realizing that like people were ready for us to have a full-on conversation about how did all those people find their way to the creativity that lives inside of them? It was through either meditation, mindfulness, Kabbalah. It was like everybody had an unlock and I had my own. And so 3 years ago, we sort of made the move into like, what is the spiritual engine that powers you into your zone of genius, where you become the instrument and like the divine light in you is the concert pianist. And so we changed the name of the podcast to Abundant Ever After. So now the podcast has like 55 million downloads because we're 8 years in.
Jeepers.
The intro you read was perfect.
I will do that again.
I actually love it. I actually love it because I really love that show, Don't Keep Your Day Job. I really love that show. We actually just remastered it and just put it back on iTunes so that it's its own feed because we got to 1,000 episodes total. And we realized that so much of this good content was buried underneath the like spiritual conversation and people wanted both. So I think it's perfect that I would keep it. I think you should keep it. I like the way you said it. It was meant to be.
Thank you.
So yeah, that's a little bit of the podcast journey. That's a little bit of the message journey. And then I wrote 2 books. And the first one was based on the first podcast. And the second book was based on the new 3-year-old iteration of the podcast.
I love it. Even just the way you talk about this is just so grounded and so matter of fact and down to earth. And I feel like it's a whole new way for people to interpret just this, like you're even talking about spirituality, but in such a just casual manner. It's really cool.
Well, I want to just address something that Ryan said, because there is a fascinating thing when it comes to words, right? Like in Alaska, they don't say snow because it's always snowing. So they have like 48 words for snow. Like you wouldn't say to someone it's snowing because you seem insane.
Yeah.
You would tell them what kind of snow it is today.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Is it sleet? Is it sludge? Is it this? Is it that? So people use these words like manifestation and they don't mean the same thing.
Right.
So like you mentioned The Secret. I've never seen The Secret. So it's just interesting. Like there's a world of people that probably came out of manifesting from this I'm just going to think a thought and there's going to like poof be something in my living room, I think is the way that works.
Yeah.
So that's not at all the way I learned it, but
Right.
It doesn't make it wrong. I'm actually really curious about it because people have brought it up so many times over the last 20 years, but I was so fulfilled with learning the words of manifestation through Kabbalah, through Jewish mysticism, because it's 4,500 years old and it's so obviously true when you learn it. It just, everything in your body goes, yep. You know, Abraham, like the Abraham, as in Abraham, Isaac, Abraham wrote the Zodiac. Like we found a book carbon dated called the Sefer Yetzirah, which is the oldest time we've ever seen the words of the Zodiac written and energy and what it all means. And when you learn it, it makes so much actual sense that there's an energy to time, that like spring feels different than winter and winter feels different than summer. And it activates different parts of it's like so obvious that none of it feels anything other than like just descriptive of what is our experience. And when you learn Judaism, it's so the same. It's like, oh, you just described my actual reality, but you just gave me a way to see it. So it isn't, right? Whatever you were describing, I don't know anything about it. All I can tell you is the way you were describing it, I would agree with you. And nothing that is really feels the same. But I'm happy to kind of like dive in and tell you a little bit about what I have learned. But I think it's all just super interesting. But those words can mean a lot to different people, and they're actually different words.
Yeah, for sure. And I kind of just threw that out there. I mean,
It was perfect, though. It's a perfect beginning to the conversation.
I'm in no way like an expert on it whatsoever. I think the secret was a little bit more about like laws of attraction.
Law of attraction, yeah.
But sort of like the same idea of being a little bit more mainstream with that realm of thought, like about how like your thoughts have power and, you know, your mindset and all that stuff. That just kind of in that same realm.
There's a lot of overlap in some of that, but there's also, I would say, from what I've come to understand about it and what I have learned, just a lot that feels different.
Yeah.
So I think it's really interesting. And I'm happy to dive in. I'm going to let you guys steer the ship. So you tell me where you want to start.
Well, so it's funny, you know, something that Ryan mentioned is he said, you know, as far as, okay, you want to make something happen. And Ryan and one of our other friends that we work with, Matt, they're like, okay, Juliana, all right, well, you go manifest it. We're gonna work right now, make it happen. And, you know, they'll bust chops that way. But as I was starting to say earlier, Ryan he's come around a lot. I would just say in the last 6 months or so to this whole concept and idea. I feel like you're just a lot more open to it. Anyway, so one of the things that, like Ryan said, you know, working hard for something, Cathy, what you say in Abundant Ever After is that, you know, we've all been taught in our society, you know, in the US at least, that in order to achieve great things, you have to work really, really hard. And that, you know, there's really no way around it. You know, people think you have to really, it seems like almost have a grueling experience in order to get this wonderful reward, whether it's, you know, just the financial aspect of it all or everything that comes with it. But in your book, you say that that's not the case. And I have always, and tell me if I'm misquoting, but I've always been, you know, in that camp too, where it shouldn't have to be hard necessarily. But I think the focus and, you know, maybe you or someone might call it like the vibration or whatever has to be there. But what's your take on that? What do you think as far as that goes?
Well, so I would start with where are we trying to get to? Right?
Mm-hmm.
This is where I would start, is that what happens in the mind is that most of the time, the thing we think we're after is the outcome. Like, I want $10 million, or I want that job, or I want my real estate business to double, or I have an outcome that I want to achieve. You even use that word, like achieve,
Mm-hmm,
right?
Mm-hmm.
And what I would just say, and we're going to start to like break this down, is that we have way bigger dreams than that. So what I mean is the idea that what we want is to achieve something is actually the fallacy. What we actually want is a state of being. What we're actually after is the feeling of being at peace.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What we're actually after is the feeling of liking our own company. What we're actually after is the feeling that our heart is like really open. What we're actually after is the feeling that the thoughts in our mind and the feeling of what it feels like to be us feels like equanimity. Feels like we're in a zone.
Yeah.
Like, you know, those moments when you're like, I'm just in the zone.
Mm-hmm.
The moments when you actually feel whole and at peace and chill and vibey, you don't need to achieve anything in those moments.
Yeah, right. You're not desiring anything at that moment.
Right.
Yeah.
So the thing about our culture, and I don't know about every other culture, but I know that the way we grow up here in the West and in the US, which, by the way, I think this is like the best country in the world. And I could do a whole podcast on why I love this country. So this is not a bash of the country. It's just,
we understand. Yeah.
there is a nonstop and I think this is the truth in Japan, I think this is the truth in a lot of places, and that's not West, that's East. I think there's a way in which humanity has created a total illusion that happiness is at the end of achievement.
Totally.
And that the way we will get to abundance is through like a big pile of stuff. And the way we'll get to abundance is through like a really big achievement and like the pride of a diploma on the wall, or like 45 employees and 6 cars. But we'll just to set the record straight, all those things might be really stimulating and challenging and cool, and it's like a fun puzzle.
Of course.
But none of that is like the medicine that creates peace and wholeness and vibe and flow and putting you in a state of equanimity. None of that. It can go together. But the what I would set the ground with is what you're after is a feeling. And so that's the part that's not hard.
Right.
That's the opposite. That's the part where, like in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, when they're driving and the guy goes, "You're going the wrong way." And he goes, "How do you know?" And he's like pretending the guy's drunk. So most of the time, everyone's going the wrong way. So does it take grit to become Picasso? Because if you Google it, his first 10 years of paintings, he was just copying everyone else until he broke through and took the risk and became Picasso. So does it take practice till you write your 100th song like Ed Sheeran and your songs go from mediocre to brilliant? Yeah, but that's a totally different thing than I want to manifest. And I'm going to use that word because that's what I write about, and that I'm going to use it in my way. When someone comes to me and says, "I want to manifest abundance in my life," I say to them, "What does that mean to you?" And they usually think it means a Range Rover, a bigger house, more money, and a lot of achievements, and maybe a bigger audience, and all of those things, right? So I say there's nothing wrong with those things, inherently, nothing wrong with it. It's just neutral. It's just whatever it is, it is. But what I know to be true is that your truth is you have a way bigger dream than stuff. Like, you didn't come to the world to go through a childhood to become an adult just to have the biggest pile of things. Like, it's actually not interesting on the deepest level. It's boring as hell.
Yeah.
What you really want is to have a vibe where you haven't outsourced your happiness. You wake up and feel plugged into the source of your own power. You feel authentic. You love people into life by going to the bagel shop. You meet a new stranger who you love. You have a really cool experience all day long with all these fun surprises. Everywhere you go, you adore people and they adore you. And life is a reflection of how good it is for you inside. And you're everybody's muse.
Right.
It's like the scene, I'm going to use another 80s movie. It's the scene in Splash when Tom Hanks just met Daryl Hannah. And John Candy's also in this movie, and he's like, "Hey, zippity-doo-dah." Like,
Yep.
if you had to choose between a big pile of stuff and feeling that feeling that he feels in that scene when he's in love, no question, you would choose that feeling.
Right.
Because if you were alone and you weren't in love, or worse, you're in a relationship but you feel alone and you have a big pile of stuff, you're miserable. So just so we're clear, the reason I say it's not hard work, what I'm talking about, is I'm talking about what you actually really want to feel abundant, which is the feeling of the lightness of your being and being turned on all day. Like, you want to be turned on.
Yeah.
You want to be turned on by jazz. Your life should feel like jazz. So
Yeah.
and here's the thing I write about, when you feel like your life is jazz, now you're going to manifest all kinds of abundance, because the person who walks through the room like jazz turns everyone on. And the thing about business, or the thing about marriage, or the thing about being a parent is that when you feel like jazz, you don't try to control people or how they perceive you. You're creating in the moment, and that's what leads your team to better stuff. That's what leads you to better ideas. And every $1 billion ever made came from an idea. It's Walt Disney. It's Jim Henson. It's Steve Jobs. This is called, I'm now not in my head because I can't figure my way out to $1 billion. I'm in flow state, which means I'm giving myself space to throw stuff at the wall and feel the feeling of how the market responds, how my wife responds. I'm pretending I'm a guy. How my kids respond, right?
Yeah.
So most of the time, the music is off for most people. The radio's not even on. And then the work is real hard because you can't move from a parked car. So is there something to it? Did Michael Jordan get his reps in? Yeah, but he meditated every day. And he wasn't playing basketball from the level of a sport. It was jazz. He is the ball.
Yeah.
So we've now gotten the data around flow state, and flow state is not working hard. Flow state is moving from a part of you that is set down your analytical mind that has no answers for you and moving into the radio of like where your energy actually gets turned on. And so that is what I wrote about. And I'm happy to go more into like how this comes from my, everything I've learned and sort of what I learned in Jerusalem. But that's why to me, the whole conversation is so different, because in The Secret, it's this, what it's saying is, I think, you want a red bicycle? Think red bicycle. And I'm saying you want the feeling of riding a red bicycle through Paris with a baguette. It's not even Paris. It's not the red bicycle. It's the feeling of wind in your hair. And if you just keep thinking red bicycle, I don't know. I mean, I don't think you can create a red bicycle unless you're David Blaine or something, but it's not even interesting. And the greatest human capital we have is our energy, and moving into flow and moving into wholeness and moving into creativity and moving into our own abundance. And the abundance is from within us. And so as Wayne Dyer said, we don't get what we want, but we always get what we are. And so when we move from the part of us that is this lit up, energetic soul state, truth, wholeness, loving, passionate, conviction, enthusiasm place, we get back everything that is, which that is abundance. That is the feeling of abundance. And when you have that with no money, you're sure as hell going to have it when you do have money. And the people who have that, their thoughts do turn to things because they're not in it for the outcome. And that's when they actually have something better than money, which is fulfillment. So that's what the book is about. And yes, I do think that there are ways to turn on the vibe, which is what I learned in Jerusalem. So I'm happy to share that as well.
Yeah, please. And I was going to say, I love in the book your radio metaphor. And, you talked about like rearranging the little bunny ears, the old antennas, and just trying to tap in and get to that place where you are in, I guess, what you would call the flow state. And just in case there's anyone that is not sure of, what are we talking about when we say flow state? Is there a way you might describe that?
Yeah. So what's really cool is that, 40 years ago, before we had any science, we would just say like that person's grumpy and that person's in a good mood. But now we've like looked at the brain and we understand what it looks like when someone's in a mindful state. We can like see the cortisol level goes down in the bloodstream and this goes up and there's dopamine. We have so much data now. So the answer to what is flow state, if you Google that, you're going to get like pages of information. And what I would say, since I wouldn't approach it that way, that's not my expertise, is flow state is a place you access, and when you're in it, and when you're not.
Yeah, it's when you're like you're wheeling and dealing. You're like firing on all cylinders and all that.
Flow state is when you're in flow state, you are Will Ferrell, right? Will Ferrell is not worried about the next thing that's going to come out of his mouth because he doesn't even know what it is. And the reason everybody laughs is because we're all surprised. And that's the beauty of flow state. Flow state isn't, I have to predict every outcome. That's called hell. Mm-hmm. That's called being in your mind. That's called overanalyzing. Flow state is, I'm not in the mind anymore. I'm playing. So flow state is losing control on purpose, which feels so good. People literally simulate this feeling by like, I'll go skydiving. It's the only way my analytical mind will shut up. It's like, well, you could do that all day if you just asked a fun question like, how could my business feel like joy today? What would I just do in this meeting that would be like just for fun? Oh, you just activated everyone who works for you. You're going to make more money this year. Mm-hmm. Flow state is I'm not in the I need to control and predict part of my mind. I'm in the let's just throw stuff at the wall because the doing of that itself feels fun. And that's when your podcast gets 50 million downloads, because you're not trying to get an outcome. You're just moving from the place where things are alive and in the moment, and everyone who hears them and perceives them feels that access to their own flow state because you're in yours. So that's the feeling of flow state. And for most people, life sucks for them no matter how much money they have, truthfully, because they're in their analytical mind all the time. So even the stuff they've acquired, it's just more stuff to now be analyzing. It's just more stuff to try to control. It's just more stuff that feels like a trap, versus like, all you want to be is Zooey Deschanel in a movie where because she always plays this character that's like, sure, why not? Yeah, I have purple hair. Like, that's what you're after. And she doesn't care about a Range Rover. She's got something better. It's called her actual life, right? If a woman goes on a date and she needs to be liked, it doesn't matter how pretty she is. She could have a friend who's less pretty, who's feeling kind of like happy with her life. The guy's more into her. So when you need the money, you push it away. When you need the guy, you push him away. When you don't need it because you're enjoying your life, you actually just attract it. You receive it. So in the book, I talk about, I moved to Israel after college. I'm like, oh, this is like a fun thing to do for the summer. I don't think I'm going to stay, but like, I'm Jewish. I've never been. My friend's going. I'll go. And then I'm going to move to New York City. Like, I don't know. I was just like a thing to check on a box. So I go. I love it. I like the food. I like the people. And I'm like, done. I'm leaving, right? This is my end of my trip. I have a flight booked. I'm leaving. And instead of leaving, I wind up in this class in the old city. This rabbi shows up. He teaches. The words coming out of his mouth are variations of things I've just said. And I grew up in the 80s and 90s watching Blockbuster Video and going to the mall. So all of a sudden, I'm like, wait, I just went to college. But now, this 1 hour, my mind is blown. No one has talked to me like this. Instead, I just like read books and memorized things. Like, what is happening? So I was really interested. So I extended my trip. And then I stayed for 3 years. And I studied with this rabbi. And he's just the most mesmerizing person. And what he told me is this radio metaphor. And he said, have you heard of the law of attraction? And I said, I think this is what people are talking about. He's like, well, listen, what we would say in Judaism is that the word would be the law of reception. And here's what that means. He says the word Kabbalah, that Hebrew word Kabbalah, means to receive. That's what it means. So the mandate from Moses passed on to all of us, right? And by the way, we as Jews, we don't go out to convert people to be Jews because we believe we all have a radio inside of us. You get to be it no matter what. The idea of Judaism was to like set up like basically a code of conduct for how we live in flow and how we live amongst each other in flow, right? And that's it. You don't have to be anything. You could be Buddhist and get it. You could be, and which is why you kind of know there's got to be truth in that when it doesn't require other people to be something they're not. Anyways.
Wait, can I just interrupt you real quick?
Yeah.
Because when you said that in the book, you know what I thought of? Because I don't know much about Judaism. Honestly, I don't know much about Catholicism. But I thought of Sex in the City when Charlotte, doesn't she have to become Jewish to marry, what is it, Harry, or what's his name?
Well, let's say it this way. I think if you're dating someone and the two of you decide that that's what's important to you,
sure,
great.
Yeah.
But in our religion,
right, okay,
it's against Judaism to go out and try to make someone Jewish.
Interesting.
The Talmud says that if somebody comes to a rabbi and says, I want to be Jewish, the rabbi is supposed to say no 3 times and say, you don't need to be Jewish. You're already whole. You could be anything and go to heaven. If you really want it, fine. But it's not something you need, which is why there's 15 million Jews in the world and 2 billion Christians.
Right.
We just don't have that as a mandate.
I think that's such a wild stat.
That is.
Yeah, there's never been a mission to convert people to be Jews because we believe that everyone's already connected to God. So there's nothing you have to do. Being Jewish is like it's in my DNA. Like my husband and I got married and found out we have all these things because we're Jews that my kids could have. Like literally, like we have like eyesight issues and different kinds of genes that get passed down. You know, like my dad, his father and his father were Kohens, like back in the Holy Temple. And there's a genetic code if your father's father's father was like a Kohen and part of that tribe.
Wow.
So it's genetics. It doesn't mean that you have to be it. Nobody has to be anything in the way that we see the world. It's a very peaceful oneness kind of vibe. But the word Kabbalah means to receive. So what does that mean? If that's sort of that's the mystical through line of all of Jewish thought is Kabbalah, right? That's like the yoga of Buddhism and Hinduism is yoga, right? So we've got Kabbalah. So what does it mean? It means, Rabbi Aaron said, think of a radio. So he said, if you put a radio in this room and you turn it on, you'll hear music. So first of all, where on earth was the music before you turn on the radio? Well, the wild answer is that it was here, hidden in plain sight.
Right.
So number one, there's all this music all the time, right? And you have to turn on your receiver to receive it. So that's number one. But number two is when you turn on a radio, you can hear jazz, you can hear classical, you can hear hip hop, you can hear oldies, whatever you want. So is the music that's being broadcasted being selected for you? Or is it being selected based upon what you're tuned to receive? And so the idea is that we're each a receiver. And if you're tuned to abundance and love and beauty and connection, your whole day will play that music. You're going to see that in everyone. You're going to feel that in everyone. That's your radio station.
Mm-hmm.
But everybody knows somebody who, I won't name names, but like, you know, if I talk to my mom, I will name names. After 5 minutes of talking to my mom,
Mm-hmm.
I think I need a nap every time. I'm like, I'm drained. Like, I'm so exhausted because she's tuned
That's how
to.
I feel about when Juliana talks to her mom. I need a nap.
I
after.
totally get that, by the
She
way.
walks around on a speakerphone and it's just like, she's still going, huh? I gotta sleep.
My husband would say the same thing. So when you talk to certain people, you remember sometimes that we all have the ability to be tuned to lack, scarcity,
Yes.
shame, doubt,
Yeah.
judgment,
Mm-hmm.
guilt, lack. And then what happens is my mom and I can go to the same place. She leaves. She has a totally different experience. And I was like, I was in that room. That is not at all what happened.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, well, that person's kind of fake. And that person, don't get too close to that person. And this, that. And did you see the way they put the placemats together? And I'm like, oh my God, right? It's like my sister and I love my sister. We grew up in the same living room. I'm 45. I'm married. I have 3 kids. She's 48. She's been single. She is single. I'll try to set her up with a guy. And she's like, it's like the Jerry Seinfeld, like, you know, she has man hands. She eats her peas one at a time. He would always have a thing.
You can always find the smallest flaw. Yeah.
So what we don't recognize is that the radio station of life will play anything,
Mm-hmm.
but you're the conductor, you're the DJ. So when you start your day every morning, what are you setting the radio to? Right? So in Judaism, we have like all these prayers that set your radio station. So the first thing you're supposed to say when you open your eyes every day is this prayer called Modeh Ani, where you're thanking the divine for returning your soul to your body. So you have another day, because the end of the prayer is because you must have a sense that I'm needed here. There's more for me to do, which is a pretty cool way to start your day, because then the outcome is not, and if you notice when we talked about before,
Mm-hmm.
most of the time people's outcomes of what they think will make them feel abundant is how much more they can get.
Yes.
But when we've done this study at Harvard, we've done this study in a million ways, the thing that makes people feel abundant is how much they gave.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Because a receiver is like a Wi-Fi router. A person who's a receiver is the person who people go, you have really good energy. And what happens when you're in the room with someone who has really good energy is it turns your radio on. And then what you're really giving is super generous, because you're not there to take. You're aware of and responsible for the energy you're bringing into a room. And you don't need to be liked. You don't need people to agree with you. You don't need the deal. And then you get everything because you're there so high vibe that your energy is a gift. And then you make better eye contact and you listen more. And so
You probably negotiate, business deals better or whatever it may be.
yeah, I mean, Brian Grazer, who actually created the movie Splash, and he's Ron Howard's partner, he was saying to me that his whole career was really simple. It was like having like really good conversations with people with no agenda and letting people talk. And then he'd be like, oh my God, that's a movie idea. Oh my God, do you want to work on that? Oh my God, wait, you were an astronaut? Oh my God, wait, you're a professor, but you have schizophrenia. That's a movie. Like Meaning to say that the real magic in life is when things that are greater than what you could even put on your want list come into your life. And it comes from setting down an agenda and actually knowing that by the end of every day, you could change the world for one person every day just by being present and cool. And then when you do that, and then you're also having fun and being creative and thinking of ideas, it's like you'll walk right into the most amazing. Like when I came to LA, I wound up writing music. I had a record deal at Interscope. I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. I got dropped from the label, had another record deal at Atlantic Records. This was like all through being in rooms and meeting people and trying things and things that led to other things. And I wound up writing television music for 10 years. I wrote music for Grey's Anatomy and Switched to Birth and Younger. And then I wrote music for commercials and McDonald's. I was just kind of like playing with that for a while. And then somebody said to me, you should start a podcast. And I was studying at UCLA. I was studying meditation for 3 years. It's so interesting how my life is just an adventure. And there was a clue when I was a kid, like, you have a good voice, maybe you should use your voice. So eventually I started songwriting once I got to LA and I started playing in the music space. But eventually how I use my voice, which felt like no effort, was a podcast. And then my podcast turned into like multiple millions of dollars, which I didn't even plan for. And it felt like I walked into it. It was like nothing. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like, so all the work and effort of like the record deals that I had that felt really hard.
Yeah.
All of a sudden I was using my voice and I didn't even have to write a hit. I was just talking.
Yeah.
So there was a clue as a kid. People were like, when you speak, it like activates people. And I'm like, okay, I like to songwrite. I have a decent voice. I tried out for American Idol when I was 20.
So by the way, that's where we have a lot of similarities. I call myself an ex-wannabe pop star, but singer-songwriter, got really close, never got the deal, but, in Atlantic Records, Ryan used to play out with us, but
yeah.
And then it was so funny because in your book, then you go to real estate. Well, what did we do? We went to real estate.
I know that was crazy because that's what I mean about being in flow. It's like when I got dropped from Atlantic, I was talking to a friend and I was like, okay, I've now been dropped from 2 deals, so I don't think this is going to happen. And she's like, well, you should go get a real job. I go, what's a real job? She goes, you can make the most money if you work in finance or real estate. I'm like, well, I can't add 2 numbers together. She's like, great. So I buy a book on real estate and I go to meet my friend at the Cheesecake Factory the next day, and I'm sitting in line because there's always a line there, or at least there was in early 2000s. I don't think there is anymore. And I'm looking at this book on real estate and this guy's sitting next to me in line. It's the lunch hour. It's Brentwood. He's just getting lunch. He's like, do you work in real estate? I'm like, here's the deal. And he goes, you have really good energy. You should come work for me. I go, what do you do? He goes, I own $1 billion in shopping centers, leverage, but like he owns $1 billion in his portfolio. So I'm like, perfect. This is what I told my friend I was going to do. So he's like, come work for me. So I go work for him for 2 years. I buy a Mercedes CLK coupe. I start making like $200,000 a year. He's taken me out on like really cool deals. I'm meeting like the head of Marcus and Millichap and this guy at Sperry Vaness and whatever commercial real estate stuff. And I don't even fit there. And he goes, you need to stay with me because you come to dinners with me, I make more money, right? Like, so he's just throwing me bonuses. I wind up getting this really cute condo. I feel like I've made it. All of a sudden I have money in the bank.
Yeah.
And then one day I saw myself in the elevator door mirror, like the mirror doors. I'm looking at myself in this like Ann Taylor jacket with heels on. I'm 27 and I'm like, I don't even know who this girl is. Like, I don't want to do this. So I walk into his office and I was like, you're going to think I'm crazy, but I'm quitting. He's like, no, I kind of knew this day was going to come. So he's like, whatever you're going to do, it's going to turn to gold. Just, you're free. So I leave and I start asking a new question, which is there any other way I can make money doing music? And I start Googling around and I read an article on indie artists like Regina Spektor who were licensing their songs for like $100,000 a pop to like Target. So I'm like, well, I know how to cold call now. So I start cold calling Ogilvy, Deutsch, Arnold Worldwide, all these like ad agencies. And I'm like, hey, Leo Burnett, Chicago, what's the best pizza in Chicago? I'm going to be in Chicago. They're like, when? And I have no plan to go to Chicago. I'm like, I'm going to be there in a week and a half. Can we meet? They're like, well, what days? I'm like, how about Wednesday? They're like, fine. So I'm like, I'm going to Chicago. So I would start like, I would cold call, which was perfect because I learned that skill cold calling principal investors.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would sell music for like a lot of money. And then I was written about in Billboard magazine, and then I was written about in Variety, and they would write these full page spreads on me because I was an indie artist who was hustling my music and making $500,000 a year. And I was like, this is nuts. And then other artists started reaching out to me and saying, can you teach me how to do that? And I was like, I guess I don't even know what I'm doing. So I start teaching in my living room, and then I rented a theater, and then the word got out that I was teaching people. And then I started this class called Six Figure Songwriting. And the first year I launched that class, the class made $2 million.
Oh my gosh. So that was the beginning of your coaching.
Yeah, I realized that for everything you've ever done, there's a line of people who want to know how you did the thing you did.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, well, this is easy. It's actually easy to do.
Yeah.
And then I started a music agency because I had all these songwriters, and I was like, why don't I just pitch your music for you? Because I have these connections. And then that was lucrative. And then one of my songwriters who was like in the mix said, my husband works for Adam Carolla and you should have a podcast. And I'm like, I don't even listen to podcasts. And she's like, I know, but when you talk, it's like, you should just do that. I'm like, okay, fine. So I start a podcast in my closet. I have 3 little kids at home. My youngest was 3 weeks old. And my podcast, I was like, I don't think anyone's going to listen to this. Like, I had no online presence, but it worked out really well. And the reason I started with don't keep your day job is because I used to start every show by saying the opposite of depression isn't happiness, is purpose. And when you're moving in flow and you're doing what you love, time stands still and you make money and you're happy and you're enjoying your life, not because of the outcome, but because of you getting to be yourself. And it was everything we talked about kind of in one show, and it really did well. And that's kind of how we got here.
What a wild and fascinating and just fun and interesting ride. Truly.
Everybody's life is pretty fascinating, actually.
Yes.
I think I dare to have a lot of fun, and I don't subscribe to rules. And yeah, I mean, and you wouldn't, like, if I showed you my house right now, I mean, I grew up, my parents were divorced. My mom and I lived in an apartment. My dad was married multiple times. We had no money. And I take this wild trip to Jerusalem, move to LA, and here I am living in a 10,000 square foot home in the hills overlooking Mulholland. And I don't even care. It's like, all I want is to be like, feel like my life is an orgasm. Like, I don't even care. If anything, it's like, it's almost like a little bit of an obstacle sometimes because people ask me to host things all the time. And then I get into that. But I've hosted a lot of really cool things and a lot of really cool people. But it's just like, it's wild. So to go all the way back to the beginning of the story, it's like, none of what I have experienced felt like hard work. It was always the opposite. It was always like, where can I walk in a room and be a vibe? And then 4 new possibilities come up that I couldn't see if I was. However, I can appreciate who I've become by being better at my craft. And I have the will of a small country. And if you listen to that story, I take massive action.
Yes.
Like,
you can tell.
I do everything, but I do it messy. That's the thing. Meaning to say, instead of trying to be perfect, I just take 10 times as many reps as you. So that's why I win.
Yeah.
Because I'm not trying to do it hard work style. I get a lot more done. And the person who gets more done is the one that wins almost. So it's like, of course, I was going to start a podcast when I had a 3-week-old daughter and a 4-year-old and a 3.5-year-old because I don't need to be perfect. So then the podcast does well. It's kind of like, yes, you got to put in the reps, but if you do the reps from the state of being where you're just going to throw it out there and just enjoy it and have a blast, that's the magic. But you do take action. It's just that you take action from flow. You take action from Will Ferrell land.
Yes.
And then you didn't realize it was hard work, but you didn't sit in a room and just close your eyes and like think of a red bicycle. It's that. So It's like, yes, I'm a big proponent of like, why are you overthinking it and not doing anything? You should take action, but the action should feel like a blast. If you're not having a blast, no one else is either.
Yeah. I think a lot of people deal with that problem though. If like they
Nonstop.
everything, it has to be perfect or you're not going to do it. So then you just end up not doing anything because you never get it to the perfect spot. Versus like, I don't know if this is a good analogy or not, but sometimes I call it like, instead of like trying so hard to make sure you hit like your one target, just fucking carpet bomb it. Just, just go after it at multiple different angles and you'll get somewhere with that. Something will happen. That's not the I don't know, it's just kind of an analogy we use. But
most people don't have any data and they're trying to like edit the movie while they're shooting it. It's like you don't have enough information to narrow in. It's like you haven't taken enough shots. You don't even know. Like, are you Jackson Pollock or Warhol? You don't even know yet. Like,
Right.
yeah.
So what you're doing is you're stopping the flow to make an analysis on what you should zero in on, and you have no business doing it because you haven't yet let yourself play and that's the thing, is like, I was interviewing Guy Kawasaki, who was at Apple for a long time. And he was like, I go, so how did you guys come up with like the iPod, which led to the iPad, which led to the iMac? And he goes, no. We didn't come up with that. We threw 1,000 other things at the wall that we tried, brought to market. No one wanted it. Then we came up with that.
Right.
So he's like, it's really convenient to be like, how did you just walk into a meeting and say iPod? Like, we didn't. What we did was we like had the courage to make a lot of stuff. And then once you make a lot of stuff, the market will tell you like, we want this, but not that. And so most people, they just want to have the answer or else they don't do it. You don't get the answer. You discover and develop the answer. It's a developing of it. It's not even a discovery. It's like it's showing you. And I interviewed most of the cast from The Office at different times, which is fun. Like Jenna Fisher and Rainn Wilson. And anyway, they all said the same thing to me in their individual interviews, which is we had no idea what we were making until like season 3. We were like, oh, this is the show that we're making. Like when we started, we were like, we think we're making this. We're not sure. We're figuring it out. And it's like, you give yourself space to make things. And then the thing you're making almost becomes alive and tells you what you're making. So when you're trying so hard to control it and work hard and get an answer, you'll probably miss it. That's the thing. And that show is the #1 streamed TV show, even now, with all the content that's been created since and before and whatever. It's like, that's nuts.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because of the authenticity of it. Because they left it alone.
Right.
They left it alone. They let it breathe and they let it be something real. So it felt different. They didn't try to like contrive it. It wasn't like canned laughter, and the writers would give them ideas and let them take it 5 different ways, right? Which is scary, but obviously makes for better content in the end. But you just have to have the right group of people to do it with, who can play in the sandbox.
Yes. And you mentioned the word playful when talking about kind of being in that flow state, having that playful energy or playful take. And I think that's a lot of it too, just not being too rigid and too serious while, like you were saying, it's all unfolding around you, and really paying attention and tuning in to what's coming back. So that way you can kind of roll with it. But no, that's funny. In your book, you mentioned that your husband he doesn't necessarily operate the way you do. Is that still the case? You mentioned he thinks about things, he plans, he preps.
Like, he went to law school, he went to business school, he went to USC, he went to UCLA, he got straight A's. And we talk about it all the time. Like, boy, did that not serve him. Like, he's a comedian and he's really funny, but he is a lawyer because he was always afraid to pursue comedy. And then I was like really on his case about like, this is your one and only life. You should probably do comedy. So he's been doing comedy and like going up at the Improv and, doing open mics. And Jay Leno was in the club last year, and then he wrote about him. He talked about how he liked him.
How
and
cool.
He was written about in LA Magazine. And my husband, it took him a month to show me the magazine. I go, oh my God. He goes, what does it say? Someone got it for me because I haven't even read it. I'm nervous. I'm like, why are you nervous? It's really good. And why did you wait a month to show me? And he's like, I don't know. I'm really resistant to this. It scares me. And I'm like, yeah, it scares you because it's a really inconvenient truth that you're living a lie and you actually want to do comedy, except every night he ever gets up to do comedy, he feels like he's going to throw up. So, but why? Because he thinks he has to be perfect, but you can't be funny if you're trying to be perfect.
It's true.
You have to be in the moment. And so he actually is really funny. And his comedy is very like self-deprecating, which is why people love him. Because all he does is like make fun of how neurotic he is.
Mm-hmm.
And he's introverted. So his Stephen Wright-ness is like very likable because he's nervous and he talks about how nervous he is. And then people laugh hilariously. And he's never let himself play like this. So he's having this like very weird experience where as it's actually getting recognized, it's really scary. And he has this job, which now is like totally irrelevant because my career grew in the last 8 years and he doesn't have to work. So he only has himself to blame. Do you understand? For
Yes.
like why
Yeah.
he's not doing what he loves, which makes him even more mad now.
Yeah.
And he's teetering between like, do I stay in this thing that's familiar or just do this thing that scares the crap out of me? So it's wild to watch.
That's great. Now, I want to look up his comedy. What's his name or what's he doing his act under?
I mean, he's done like 10 open mics. It's not like you're going to find him.
Okay.
But where you will find him is I posted one of his sets on my Instagram and people really, really, really liked it.
Okay.
Like they didn't have to like, do me a favor. And they were like, he's very funny.
Hilarious.
I'll text
Okay.
it to you.
Please
I'll
do.
forward you the clip.
Oh, good. Yeah. Self-deprecating humor. I mean, that's the best.
I know.
So that's exciting. Well, it sounds like you're a really great influence on him for...
He wouldn't see it that way. He thinks it's like quite annoying and judgmental that I'm like, he'll be like, are you doing the thing you love? Are you passionate? He's like, some people aren't passionate. I'm like, yeah, right.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, but you're also a married couple, so.
There's always going to be some of that. Is that what you mean?
It's very
Yeah.
hard. It's
Yeah.
very hard. We've been together for 17 years. And so, yeah, it's wild. But he's definitely my like closest friend and support.
That's great. And now, okay, so with your husband as an example, there are so many people that we know that, perhaps they have a day job. And I'm always the one to be like, yeah, quit your day job. Do what you love. Very almost, I think a lot of people think I'm like out of touch when I, have that kind of attitude. I quote Elle Woods, what? Like it's hard, No, but I was just going to ask, what advice would you give to someone that may be looking to make a change and really kind of pursue the creativeness within them, with that playful attitude when they're worried about, oh, but I need this paycheck. What's your advice in that regard? Because I feel like you have a lot of good advice.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that the first step is to look at your current job as the investor to your dream right now and use this as a path to build a bridge, to build a runway to what your thing will be. Most people don't like to admit it, but they're on their phone 3 to 6 hours a day. So when people tell me they have no time, I just say, can I see your screen time?
Yeah, right.
And then they realize that they're full of crap.
Yeah.
So what I would say is that we underestimate what's possible if we spent 1 hour a day just starting to ideate and look at like, close your eyes, write down 5 things that could light you up. Oh, maybe pottery, maybe editing a podcast, maybe this. Oh, great. Now go interview 5 friends, ask them, what do they think you'd be best at? Now go interview a few people that do that job. Start trying it, start testing it, and use the next 6 months at your current job to spend 1 hour, not 20, 1 hour a day, searching the internet, reading things, talking to people, testing things, playing guitar, trying the thing, making the cake, doing the things and testing it, because you're not ready to quit anyway. So I would say once you've been testing and playing and looking and collecting information, you might now be like, well, I know exactly what I want to do. And I even started a side hustle and I made $2,700. That's it. But I made $2,700 from teaching Spanish or from travel writing. So now I know I can quit because if I had 40 hours a week to do it, I could scale the $2,700 to X.
Right. Yeah.
And so most people, they think things very binary. Like I either quit my job or I stay. It's like you have to be ready to quit. And to be ready to quit, you need to do this kind of discovery work. And also, you'll wind up liking your current job and tolerating it more when you know it's funding, you're using your bandwidth to start creating your path. And then it won't bother you. You'll be like, I'm so glad right now I have the bills covered so I can use the time to work on my craft. And then, yeah, the sky's the limit.
That's perfect. Thank you so much. Cathy, love chatting with you.
I love chatting with you guys. I do so many of these and this was quite fun. Like you're really good at what you do.
Yeah. I feel like we could probably do this a couple more times and not run out of content.
No, I know. So much.
Yeah.
And also we have to get together in LA. I'll let you know when we're out there.
Okay.
But love your book. Where can people find you? Your website? I know you have a coaching program.
I have a coaching program. It's like learning jazz lessons, kind of. It gets you into flow state. It's pretty cool. But yeah, you can find my podcast, Abundant Ever After. You can find me on Instagram at Cathy.Heller. All the things. The book you can find anywhere. Target, Barnes & Noble, Amazon.
I see it everywhere, at the airports and everywhere in between. It's great. Thank you so much, Cathy. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you again.
Thank you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye. And that wraps up this episode of On the Edge with Ryan and Juliana.
Thank you so much for listening. And please be sure to subscribe to our show on your favorite podcast platform.
We'll see you next time.